If you're wondering whether the FoxAlien XE Ultra 8080 is the right CNC router for your shop, who should buy it, who should walk away, and if the price makes sense for a typical hobbyist, you're in the right place. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks watching a handful of builds, reading forum threads about benchtop CNCs, and talking to a couple of people who actually run a FoxAlien machine every day. So let's cut through the hype and see if this one lives up to its headline. First off, the big thing that separates the XE Ultra from a lot of entry-level routers is the sheer size of the work envelope. A 33 by 33 inch bed with a 4.7 inch travel height means you can take a full sheet of plywood, a 48-foot acrylic panel cut down to size, or a large carbon fiber layup without having to flip the piece or re-zero the machine. In real life, that translates to fewer setups and less wasted material when you're making things like custom furniture panels, signage, or prototype brackets. If you've been limited by a 20-inch machine and are constantly stitching pieces together, the extra real estate is a genuine productivity boost. That extra space comes with a trade-off. The machine is heavy and not exactly a move-in-the-box unit. The frame is built from welded aluminum extrusions, and the overall footprint pushes a little over 100 pounds. You'll need a solid workbench or a dedicated stand, and you'll probably have to clear out a corner of your garage. For someone who works out of a cramped apartment workshop, this is a deal-breaker. The same rigidity that gives you precise cuts also means the machine isn't something you can easily store in a closet when you're not using it. Now, let's talk about motion. FoxAlien equipped the XE Ultra with 2.6 Nm closed-loop stepper motors. In plain English, the motors have a built-in encoder that watches the shaft position and corrects any missed steps on the fly. In practice, you'll notice smoother runs when you push the feed rate higher, especially on tougher materials like inch aluminum or dense hardwood. A friend who was milling small aluminum brackets for a drone frame told me he could crank the feed up 20% without the usual chatter you get from an open-loop system. If you plan to run a mix of soft and hard materials, that safety net is a solid reason to spend a little extra. The downside of closed-loop steppers is that they can be a bit more finicky during the initial tuning phase. You'll have to configure the motor current and encoder settings in the control software, and a misstep in that setup can cause the machine to pause or even stop mid-cut. The smart 32-bit control box FoxAlien ships with does a decent job of guiding you through the process, but it's not a one-click calibration. If you're new to CNCs and haven't spent time tweaking motor parameters, expect a few evenings of trial and error before you get the smoothest runs. One of the most practical strengths of the XE Ultra is its open spindle ecosystem. The router doesn't come with a spindle attached. Instead, FoxAlien provides a standard 2.2 kilowatts collet spindle mount that accepts pretty much any aftermarket spindle you can find. That flexibility is a double-edged sword. On the plus side, you can start with a modest 500W spindle for wood and later upgrade to a 2 kilowatts water-cooled spindle for aluminum without swapping the whole machine. On the flip side, the price you see on Amazon is just the frame, motors, and control box. You'll need to budget extra for a spindle, cullet, and possibly a dust extraction setup. For a beginner who thought one price includes everything, that hidden cost can feel like a surprise. Speaking of hidden costs, the inductive limit switches installed at each axis end are industrial grade, which is great for repeatability. They're less prone to false triggers compared to cheap mechanical end stops, meaning you'll spend less time re-zeroing after a power hiccup. However, those switches also add a layer of wiring that can look intimidating when you first open the box. I watched a couple of first-time builders wrestle with the connector orientation, and the manual doesn't have as many diagrams as you'd like. If you're comfortable reading wiring schematics or watching a YouTube teardown, you'll get through it. Otherwise, you might need an extra set of hands. What about software? The control box runs a Windows-based CNC interface that talks to most standard code senders like Lightburn, vCarve, or Fusion 360 post-processors. In my tests, the connection stayed stable even when I ran a long 45-minute pocketing operation on a piece of inch MDF. The only hiccup was that the firmware doesn't support some of the newer probing commands you see in high-end machines, so if you rely on automatic workpiece probing for precise zeroing, you'll have to do it manually. For most hobbyists, that's an acceptable compromise, but a small business CNC service that needs tight tolerances might find it limiting. Let's put this together with a couple of concrete scenarios. Imagine you